to this lesson on factors and multiples. We're going to start by answering the question of what are factors. So let me just bring up my pen. Factors are essentially numbers that divide evenly into another number. So they go together with something else to create a new number. So let's go write that down. So these are numbers, obviously they're numbers, that divide evenly into another number, i.e. the factors of 20, and we're going to put them in ascending order, are, alright, we're going to start with 1, we have 2, we also have 4, 5, 10, and 20. Okay, so essentially, every whole number, because we can see that on our list here, every whole number has itself and 1 as factors. Every whole number has itself and 1 as factors. So that's factors. That's factors. Now let's go and look at multiples. We'll look at multiples. Alright. So factors are numbers that make up other numbers. Multiples are those numbers that we've just made up with the factors. Okay. So they're created by multiplying numbers together. So what we're going to write down, these are numbers. These are numbers that are created, because we're creating new numbers when we do this, are created by multiplying any number by another number, and another positive number. And it can be any positive number, and what the word we use for that is integer. Okay, that's the word we're using, i.e. the multiples of 20, because that's what we used before. The multiples of 20 start with 20. Yeah, it's its own multiple because you times it by 1 and get 20. If you times it by 2, you're going to get 40. Times it by 3, you get 60, and so on and so on. Until the end, okay? And something to remember here, there are infinite multiples for every number. There are infinite multiples for every number. Okay, that means that the list never ends. The list never ends. It keeps going and going. So all this means, in summary, is that factors are going to be either less than or equal to a number, less than or equal to our number being considered, so the number that we're thinking of, such as 20 from our example, and multiples will be bigger. So they're going to be greater than or less, or equal to. Okay, so there's the gist of what we're talking about. So let's move up a little bit and let's have a look at some examples. Alright, so what we want to do first is we want to get the factors for the two numbers we've got. So 15, numbers that can be multiplied together to get 15 are obviously 1 and 15. And the other numbers are 3 and 5. So there's our big list. No other number can go into 15, right? Because that's what we're looking for, numbers that can go into. So smaller numbers than the number we're dealing with. And now we've got 40. So we've got 1 and 40 because it's 1 times 40. Okay, we can have 2 times 20. 2 times 20. We can have 4 times 10. 4 times 10 if I write that properly. And we can have 5 times 8. And there's our factors for 40. Alright, so now we're going to move on to multiples. We're going to find the first 6 multiples because as we said before, they just keep going and going, those lists. So now we're going to have 11. So our multiples of 11, well, if we times 11 by 1, we get 11. By 2, 22. And then we have 33 and 44, 55 and 66. So what we're really doing is we're timesing by 1, timesing by 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6. Alright, but we're also adding 11 each time. Okay, so this is what multiples are happening here. Okay, if we do a bigger number, so let's look at 35 here. Obviously we have 35. We times it by 2 and we get 70. We times it by 3, we get 105. Times it by 4, we get 140. Times it by 5, we get 175. Times it by 6, we get 210. So same deal, we're timesing by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And this time we're adding 35 each time. So it's a nice, easy way to look at finding those multiples. Okay, back to my pink. Now we're going to have a look at finding two factors that are a product. So remember that product means times or multiply. Okay, means times or multiply. So we want two numbers that multiply together to get 195. So that means we're looking for two numbers that go together. So two factors. Alright, two factors of 195. Now, if we look at this number here, we've got 195. 195 ends in a 5. Alright, so we can look at a number which is greater than 10, because that's what our question is asking. Greater than 10 that ends in 5, because that's a really good starting point. If something ends in 5, it can be divided by something else that ends in 5. That's just the nature of that particular number. So I'm going to start by dividing by 15. So I'm going to go 195 divided by 15. Okay, so I'm going to make a little note over here. Alright, start with the first number greater than 10 that ends in 5. Okay, and so it's a little bit of a trial and error. And if we do this, we actually get 13. Okay, so there's two numbers that are factors of 195 that we've discovered that are both greater than 10. Right, so 15 and 13 are our two factors today. Okay, so you should have attached to your handout the questions to do, and good luck with that. If you need to review the video, do so.